So I'm here because I work with the Swift Centre. I work with them originally as a forecaster, but I also write and edit the articles, and I run the forecasting sessions that we do. The purpose of the workshop was twofold. One big part of it was the value of the process itself in terms of focusing people's minds, especially when there are lots of claims you can make and lots of a high degree of uncertainty in terms of North Korea's arsenal and its strategy and its mission. So part of it was just getting these very explicit questions down and having that very clear focus for people to think about. And another part is also it's a way of really productively collating that information of this intelligent, diverse group of people. And so yeah, those are the main goals. So when we say forecasting, we typically are referring to judgmental forecasting, crowd forecasting, and this is distinct from, say, how people typically forecast the weather or how they do economic forecasting, which is very data heavy and has usually preset algorithms. Those things do inform our forecasts and we incorporate them, but fundamentally our style of forecasting that we introduce is judgmental, particularly for events that are usually unprecedented, or there are only a few instances of them in history, so you can't generate a huge data set for them. So you need human judgment, and you get better forecasts when you aggregate lots of people together and train them according to best practices, and also importantly keeping score. So actually having a culture of making forecasts, logging them, using probabilities in a very explicit way, and tracking how we score on those forecasts over time. A thing that really stuck out to me, especially given recent news reports about Russia and North Korea's cooperation, we asked a fairly specific question. It was quite a high bar in terms of what Russia might be willing to supply over the next 5 years in terms of nuclear weapons technologies. So the one thing that really stuck out for me was how low the likelihood was perceived to be for our particular version of that question over the next 5 years, quite a long time span. I actually have conflicted views on this, because I think when I got really involved in forecasting, especially during the pandemic, it was clearly incredibly valuable in terms of what came out of the process, but I became quite disenchanted with it because it didn't translate at all to the real world. There was this huge gap between what was available and what could be known about the future and how to reason about it, and then how little of that filtered to policymakers. And the nature of forecasting in general, it can be quite insular, and as a community in terms of these sites, and the focus is more on having fun and really optimizing your score, that sort of thing, and you're not necessarily focused on generating value or focusing on the really important questions. So for me, forecasting by default isn't valuable, but there's so much potential in terms of the epistemic processes and the information you can extract from it. And that's the thing I'm really excited about, which is to translate that to decision makers in the real world to actually steer the world in a better direction.